Alright, YouTube, it's me, David Harry, your favourite vlogger and YouTuber, and in this video I'm going to be doing my very first vlog with my new Hero 11, as we can see there. Now what I'm going to do is get into this video as fast as possible. I will explain a bunch of the things that I'm doing with the camera in the video, explain some of the settings and whatnot, but the general thing here is as out of the box as possible, fully automatic and using the internal microphones. I will also come back at the end of the video and do a fairly in-depth summary with a lot of detail about what I've noticed, and also I will go over all the actual settings proper and stuff like that. So anyway, on with the video. Okay, so my first vlog then on the Hero 11. So what I'm going to do is just walk up the bridle path here, which is normally my route into the park for testing things like microphones and whatnot and cameras, and then what I'll do a little bit in one of the fields in the park and stuff, and depending upon what the battery's like, which seems to be burning through really badly right now, I'll try and do a little sit down piece if I can. Now the thing is, I don't know what the battery come with, but it already dropped down to 15% by the time I did all the faffing around trying to install the software and that. And then what I've done, I put it on charge for a bit before I come out, so I'll come out with 20% battery. So that should hopefully be enough, considering that this battery lasts longer and stuff like that. So I should be able to get myself, a few takes here to have a quick test with. But nonetheless, the main thing that I'm doing here is to test to see what it's like out of the box. So this is as out of the box as possible right now. So the only things that have really changed are put it into linear field of view because that's what I prefer for vlogging. I've switched on auto wind. I put wind off because the wind thing for me is of absolutely no use. Sorry bud. Sorry, mate. Because the wind thing for me is of absolutely of no use because it affects the EQ and tone of the pickup and stuff like that. So I try and avoid that wherever possible. And also I've bought that that foam wind slayer as well, which I'll be testing with this. And that is what I would use to try and knock out wind, not the electronic variant that's within inside the GoPro. I've also put it on 10-bit. I've also put it at the highest bit rate. Now that does mean going into the Pro Tune settings, but I didn't do anything other than switch that on. And as far as the color profile is concerned, I've also got that set to, is it called natural, whatever it's called. It's not like the vibrant one, so hopefully I'm going to be a lot happier with this particular color profile as the basic color profile to be messing with, without having to go into the flat one and then tooling around in post with that. Anyways, and nonetheless, the audio here, I've not done my usual thing to it also as well. I'm going in and out of tree cover here, so this is going to be good for the auto gain. And obviously it's everything else is automatic as far as exposure is concerned. It's only those few things that have changed. Now as far as the mics are concerned, what I was trying to say there before I rudely interrupted myself, right, I usually only take one side of that stereo recording, center it in post, and then just kind of gain it up and limit it and stuff in post like that. However, for this one, I'm not doing that. What I'm doing here is recording it exactly as it is and uploading it exactly as it is. So I've not even re-leveled at all in post, let alone use a limiter. So the introduction to the video, and if I do an outro to the video, that microphone level would be quite low compared to my usual videos, only because I didn't want those things to be much louder than what this is going to be. So basically as out of the box as possible. Okay, so I'm now into one of the fields in the park, so I don't have any kind of reflections or anything, say off brick walls and stuff, which I do get when I'm on that bridle path. So hopefully this is going to give us another idea of the type of sound we're going to get from the internal mics and whatnot. Now the thing is, the battery is burnt right the way down to 7%. Seriously, this is dropping like a very heavy stone at the moment. So what I've done before I come into the park, I did a piece by the road just so we could have an idea of how well it's going to pick up my voice against the traffic. So let me just cut to that and get that out the way with. Okay, so just a quick test by all the traffic, and there's a bunch of traffic about to come past right now. So yeah, all this traffic has just left the lights up there, so there should be quite a long stream of traffic here, hopefully, to give us a good idea of how I'm being picked up against all the noise off the traffic on the road. Bit more traffic coming along here right now, so bit more traffic just there. and then there'll be a bit more traffic in a second. This is dead boring, isn't it? Right, so basically what this test is for is just to see how well my dialogue is being picked up as well as all that traffic there. Okay, so obviously that bit by the road there is just to give us an idea of how well my voice is going to be getting picked up against all those other loud noises and stuff. Now, right now, when I did the bit by the road there, it had just gone past 6 o'clock. So that is quite kind of still probably heavy traffic. Maybe it's just getting to the back end of rush hour. So that'll give you an idea of like the amount of traffic that was going on. Also, it's now about, I think, I'm looking at the GoPro for the time. I'll look at my watch instead because that's what it's for. Although it's telling me how many, what is that, calories I've burned. I've only walked about 500 yards. Right, it's just gone about 10 past, quarter past that type of time. So that's the type of light we've got at the moment. It's not particularly dark or anything, but it's not particularly bright either. And that's mostly because it's quite overcast and cloudy at the moment. But nonetheless, what I'm going to do is walk around a little bit just so I can go in and out of the direction of the sunlight, and let's just get an idea of what it might be doing as far as exposure for my face is concerned. So the sun is over that way there, so if I turn round, although the sun is behind the clouds at the moment, so that might not be so useful, but nonetheless what I'm doing right now is giving ourselves an idea of what the sound's going to be like in a pretty open space. So no kind of like major other noises, and also like no kind of like obstacles for me voice to bounce off and stuff, because obviously the thing with the microphones on this system, they are like, you know, combinations of omnis and stuff like that, so they will pick up absolutely everything that's going on around you, which doesn't make it so good when you're standing by roads and stuff like that, or if you're in environments where it's maybe quite noisy. However, because I am the closest thing to the camera and its microphones, it may well be that it's picking me up well anyways, even when I was by the road. So this is all stuff that I would always test with any microphone or any camera with built-in microphones and stuff like that. I've already done a bit of walking in and out of like that shaded area and stuff like that, so that's going to give me a really good idea for my very first kind of like out of the box automatic kind of like vlogging thing with the Hero 11 with its internal microphones. Now I was going to go and sit down and do a bit sitting down, but I definitely won't have enough battery for that. So what I'm going to do is end this take now. I'll go indoors, have a quick listen, and then do a bit of an end summary. Okay, so to an end summary then, and what it is, I've written some notes here on my iPad to keep me on track. So this is probably going to be fairly detailed and stuff, so I'll just kind of crack on with these things and like give you an idea of like, once again, going over the settings, things that are noticed, and like, you know, say good and bad stuff, whatever. Anyways, first off is, let me just go over the settings again here. I did mention the vast majority of them within the video, but what I will do is run through them now. Okay, so it was 5.3K and that was 25 frames per second. Also, this video has been uploaded at 5K 25 as well. Linear field of view for the lens, so that was something that was changed from what it was as standard. I prefer linear because it's vlogging. Hyper smooth was set to on. Now, when I say set to on, just its first level of hyper smooth, so no boost or anything like that. I do like to try and keep the frame as wide as possible. Some notes in a second on the hyper smooth. Let's see, blah, 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 blah. Then I went to Pro Tune, right. Now, although this isn't out of the box per se, what I wanted to do was just to record 10 bits anyway. I'll mention a bit about that in a second. But also, I wanted to use the high bit rate, and I wasn't too sure if I could hit those settings without being in Pro Tune. So kind of went into Pro Tune to switch a couple of things on. But once again, like, you know, mostly out of the box. These were just preferences for myself, which is what I would want to use with it. And then everything after that was basically automatic for the exposure. So auto shutter, EV comp 0, white balance auto, ISO minimum 100, max 1600, sharpness was medium, and color was actually something that I did change as well. I changed the color to neutral, and then after that point the only other thing was the wind thing. I switched that off. I don't want to have the GoPro determining what it's going to do or what it thinks it should be attenuating as far as frequencies are concerned, you know, with regards like trying to like, you know, knock out wind and stuff like that, because that will inevitably have an impact on the overall tone. And then everything after that point is basically as is. Okay, so next thing then is the whole 10-bit issue and stuff like that. that. Now, to be clear, you do not need to record 10-bit anything when you're uploading the files to YouTube, because YouTube will end up just recompressing to 8-bit anyway, also with a chroma subsampling of 420. Now, at this point in time, I don't know what the chroma subsampling is with those files, even at 10-bit. You know, these should really be 422 to be of any use. However, I've got a feeling that they're still only going to be 420 anyway. So regardless of what you may have been told by all those lunatics on, like, you know, YouTube, who are going on about, oh, how great 10-bit is, blah, blah, blah. The only way 10-bit is going to help you for something that's specifically designed to be uploaded to YouTube is if you need to push and pull that within post-production. Now, the only problem with that is, like I say, I still don't even know if that's 422 chroma subsampling, which really is what you should be at as a minimum if you're recording 10-bit anyway. So, you know, yes, it might give you a hand in post, but I won't know that until I properly like have a good mess with this thing, record like the flat profile for ProTune, and then tool about with it in post and whatnot. But even then, the amount of pushing and pulling that you're likely to do may not have been anything that was ever going to bother 8-bit anyway, but nonetheless, just to record a 10-bit file and then upload it to YouTube, it's going to look like it was 8-bit anyway by the time YouTube does its thing. But nonetheless, I uploaded at 10-bit anyway with a high bit rate and whatnot at 5.3K. Now, as far as the audio was concerned, as I've already said in the video, what you heard there was exactly as it was recorded. Although there was a bit of headroom in post to have, like, you know, hired up that level, I didn't hire it up anyways. And the reason why is because I want to give people a really good idea of what the audio would be like level wise if they just uploaded direct to YouTube. Okay, so that is exactly what I've done there. Now, usually I would pick one channel of the internal mics on a GoPro, center it in post-production, and then apply a limiter and like kind of like, you know, shave off those, like, you know, last few dB at the top and resum even higher in order to get that louder output and things like that. It's not necessarily as like drastic as compression and stuff like that, and it most certainly doesn't go destroying like the tonal qualities, but it is something that I would normally do in order to get that louder output coming out at the back end on YouTube. Now, that is something that I will try moving forward. I will do that whole, like, you know, post-process chain, as it were, which is very simple, and I will explain that as I do it as well and give a good example of that. However, for this particular video, the audio was just uploaded as it was, in spite of the fact that I did have a bit more headroom that I could have pushed in post. But once again, I wanted to give people an exact kind of idea as to what the audio level was going to be like if they were to just take a raw file from the camera and upload straight to YouTube. And so now to say the negative stuff, not necessarily really bad or anything like that, but some of the stuff that I had maybe some slight concerns about. In the top left corner of the frame, what I noticed was that it looked like it was going a little bit milky every now and then. It was almost as if it was like the start of a lens flare creeping into the frame. However, it wasn't dead bright either when it was out, and I also noticed that kind of like little bleached mark, as it were, when I was actually in shade as well. Now, of course, when you're in shade, if you got strong light, it'll still come through like, you know, cracks in the trees and foliage and stuff like that. However, that was not a bright day. Now, the lens was perfectly clean. I made sure of that before I started recording. However, I did notice this little weird kind of ghosting bleach effect in the corner, like a little bit of a milky look. Like I say, it looked akin to, like, you know, a lens flare into the corner or the start of a lens flare. However, I will have to do a little bit more kind of testing for that. But that was something that it did annoy me on playback, let's put it that way, and it definitely wasn't the lens being dirty or anything like that. Now, as far as the battery is concerned, obviously it's not really something that I can kind of go into right now because I did not go out with a full battery. However, I did kind of top it back up a little bit to about 20% before I went out, and it did feel like it was running down really quickly. So it was actually running down a lot faster than what I would have expected for this, like, you know, higher capacity battery. You have to remember, I've never used this battery before on a GoPro. I was actually expecting a bit more than what I got out of it when I was, like, you know, on 20% to start off with. However, that's a really bad metric to be measuring battery life on, because usually what you will find when a battery is fully charged, you're going to get like a lot more kind of like power, as it were, at the beginning of like the life cycle of that charge. So as it comes down, it might look like it's coming down disproportionately faster, and it probably is. However, in the case of this battery, it might be the fact that you get all the main strength of it from the start of a full charge. So I'll look deeper into that as well. I'll do more testing about that kind of thing. However, for now, 20% on the last legs of the battery, I wasn't overly impressed by it. Now, as far as the stabilizer was concerned, I only had the stabilizer in normal, and the main reason for that is because I just want to have that extra field of view and stuff. It just allows me to pull the GoPro closer to myself, especially on internal microphones. So obviously, the closer the GoPro is to you, the more response you're going to get with the microphones, and the best way to do that is to have the widest field of view that you can. Now, obviously, I could have gone wider with the field of view and then maybe added more of the stabilizer in. However, I like to record in the linear field of view, which basically reduces as much as possible that kind of fisheye GoPro look, which is not what I want. But I've got to say, I wasn't particularly happy with the way that the stabilizer was handling things, although it might be the case that most of that stuff that I didn't like, such as like the odd jerky movement and stuff like that, and like just lack of stability, really, it might well be the case that that was happening when I was kind of under the trees and it was a bit darker, because you have to remember, all of these, like, you know, electronic image stabilizers like the one in the GoPro or any other camera, they don't work so well once the light starts dropping. They need a lot more light for those stabilizers to become very effective. So once again, I won't kind of like get all bent out of shape about it, because I need to go out on a proper nice bright day and then judge that level of stabilizer in linear view on a bright day. Now, as far as, say, the positive stuff is concerned, first thing is, it's a GoPro, and they are absolutely amazing for vlogging, for the size and stuff. Obviously, after a lot more testing, I will work out whether the 11 is going to give me much of a difference between all the other GoPros I've ever had. And I've had every single one of them since the very first 3, so all the iterations right the way through. There might have been one like of the silvers or something that I didn't bother with. But anyway, I've had all of them, so I can effectively get a good gauge of this from what I already know about GoPros going further down the line and stuff. But yeah, the bottom line is, when GoPros work and, like, you know, they're not crashing or heating up or doing crazy stuff, for me personally, they are the perfect vlogging camera. So that's the first plus point that I will say about this setup. I mean, just look at it. It's tiny. It's awesome. So yeah, you know, first plus point, it's a GoPro, and they are absolutely fantastically designed, intentionally or not, to be a great vlogging camera by its size. Now, as far as the sound was concerned, I was very pleased with it. I wouldn't say I was over the moon or anything, do you know what I mean? It's not like using an external mic or a good lavalier or anything like that. But as far as, like, you know, internal mics are concerned, yes, I've heard better on other devices. I've heard better on phones. I mean, Samsung phones, for instance, tend to be really good, all the new ones. However, I would say it was probably in the ballpark of what I was expecting. I didn't really think it was going to be a marked difference from previous GoPros, especially the last couple. But nonetheless, it wasn't bad, and it definitely was well usable. Now, you also have to remember, I didn't do any processing with that audio. So by the time I've done my usual thing, like I said before, you know, use one side of the audio, put it in the center of the stereo field, put a bit of limiting on, raise it up, get it a bit more punchier coming out the back end for the likes of YouTube, it will actually, like, you know, it will sound like it's better anyway at that point. So like I say, don't have a problem with the internal mics per se, because they are not really something that I was ever going to think were going to be like a massive change anyway. So the next thing is the bit rate, and I'll explain this in a little bit of detail without getting too boring, hopefully, but I will also refer back to the 10-bit option as well. So basically, from what I can understand when I was looking at the menu, in order for me to do certain things, I had to go to the Pro Tune thing to switch on certain stuff. So I think in combination going into the Pro Tune and selecting 10-bit, you do get that extra little bump in the bit rate as well. I'm still yet to work out what that that is on the standard firmware and stuff, because don't forget you've also got that GoPro Labs software that you can install, and I believe I've actually read somewhere that goes up to 200 megabits. I don't know if that's what it's doing inside the camera when it's just the standard software and firmware, but it is something that I'll look into. But nonetheless, I do believe that when I went into the ProTune settings, that was the way to bump the bitrate up. Now, the reason why that's like very important as far as I'm concerned, and quite possibly more important than 10-bit or anything like that, is because like usually with GoPros, their bit rates, I think they're a bit too on the low side. And where this normally shows up is in fine detail and stuff like that. So for instance, if you're going past like a lot of heavy foliage, loads of like leaves and trees and stuff like that, or basically anything with a ton of detail, maybe like loads of different color and like, you know, basically like, you know, dark and bright and stuff like that, you tend to find that GoPros, especially after they're being encoded by YouTube, you'll get kind of like that mosaic pattern going on into your shadows and stuff like that. Now that can be got around with the original bitrate recording being higher. So hopefully that is something that I will notice, but I won't have noticed it yet because I've got to wait to see this video that you've just watched to see how that translated after the encoding by YouTube. Because the problem here, you've got like all the effects of concatenation going on, so all that like ever decreasing bit rate and whatnot and re-encoding. But hopefully that extra bump in the bit rate is going to be a really good thing, and if it does do what I expect it to do, it would be the thing, or why I would recommend switching on 10-bit. If that higher bit rate is linked to 10-bit, that would be the main reason for doing it. But nonetheless, higher bit rate, it's always more appreciated by someone like me who's a bit of a divvy who goes pixel peeping and stuff like that. And then finally, I think maybe the biggest plus point for me was the color profile. So I selected natural and not the usual kind of like day glow color that GoPros usually do. Now granted, it was quite muted with the light and stuff like that. A lot of it was kind of in shadow and it wasn't like blasting light or anything like that, but I have to say I was really pleased with the skin tones. Now I also have to say the picture to me looked like it was slightly underexposed for certain parts there as well. That's another thing I'll have to look into as far as the settings is concerned and whatnot. But don't forget, this was supposed to be as automatic as possible because that's the way that the vast majority of people are going to use GoPros for vlogging. People don't really want to sit there and start pissing around in menus and like going all weird just to be able to pick the camera up, hit record and start doing a simple vlog. However, and nonetheless, I do think that that particular color profile thing, that natural or neutral, whatever it's called, I do think that that is actually really good. So I've got a feeling that once I start hitting like brightest like days and brighter like scenes and stuff like that, I'm definitely going to feel the benefit from that. Because if anybody who's like familiar with my stuff, like, you know, from the past, they will know that one of my biggest gripes was the way GoPros would like make my skin color go like orange and stuff like that. Now that didn't just then, but like I say, you know, it was a muted day, not tons of light, but it did seem to work really well. So I'm hopeful that that is going to be a really big plus point. And in all honesty, if that is the one main thing that, like, you know, is working for me with this Hero 11, that would be the one main thing why I would have gone for it if I know that that is going to be really good on bright days. Okay, so that will do for the summary. And that was actually a bit longer than what I even thought it was going to be. And the reason why is because I did make notes as well to kind of stick to as I was doing the summary. And that was all from watching the footage on my monitor as I was like playing it back and doing a bit of the editing before I did this bit. Now, the thing is, in there, I've obviously mentioned a bunch of things, which I will go into in like, you know, very focused single videos further down the line. Also, there's been some really good comments made on some of my previous videos up to this point about the Hero 11 and also the Action 3 as well. So I'm actually going to start diving into some of the things that people are mentioning within the comments and see if I can kind of do like maybe some shorter focused videos with questions that people have been asking as well, like very specific use case stuff, which might not take me too long to do. But nonetheless, there are going to be a whole bunch of things coming up with the Hero 11 as long long as I don't get any major shocks with it once I start using it in bright daylight and all that type of stuff. And of course, there is going to be a whole bunch of stuff to do with microphones and things like that, and some comparisons with other things as well. Probably initially the Action 3, but I'll find other things to do, like little comparisons with. But I don't want to get bogged down with doing like tons of comparisons, because that's what everyone does on YouTube, and it's like, to be honest, it's pretty pointless for the best part. Because as a for instance, if you do a comparison with this and the Action 3 side by side, you will definitely notice differences. Now at that point, some people might just like one over the other because they've seen a difference. However, I can guarantee you, if you did stuff on its own with a Hero 11 and then done some stuff on its own with, say, the Action 3, most people are not going to see those differences, do you know what I mean? And they would be very happy to see either of them being played back on a video on YouTube. So that's one of the reasons why I don't really want to do too much comparison stuff. I'll do a little bit, you know, maybe testing very specific things and stuff like that. But overall, if you've got yourself a good action cam and stuff like that, or a good anything that you're doing vlogging with, there's no real need to start going like, you know, freaking out comparing it to other things. And on that point as well, I'm not entirely sure that this is such a great difference between like it and the Hero 10. And on that point, there'll be a link hopefully on the screen right now, but definitely at the end and in the description below, taking you to Tone's Adventures. So Tone from Tone's Adventures HD, he's been doing a fair few things recently with his new Hero 10. He's had, I think he's had it now for a couple of months or something. Go and check his stuff out. His Hero 10 stuff looks really amazing on some of the vlogging that he's been doing, and I personally think that he has now got a fantastic vlogging rig. He also uses the ZV-1 as well. Now, I'm not saying the Hero 10's better than the ZV-1, but for some of the stuff that Tone's been doing, that Hero 10 is way better because it's more practical and he gets a great picture out of it. So this is what I'm saying about like the comparative stuff and things like that. You can kind of go all around in circles with these things. If you've got something that you're dead happy with, I'm not going to recommend that anyone run out and buy one of these just because it's the latest one, because there's a fair chance you may not notice that much of a practical difference. But nonetheless, I will be doing a bunch of things with this on its own, with microphones and stuff like that. I don't know when to shut my trap. Anyways, listen, if you've liked this video and whatnot, definitely subscribe to the channel and get all over that bell notification icon thing, because I'll be doing, you know, a fair bit more like this type of video and like other stuff similar in the future and things like that. I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.